Okay. Hi everyone, this is SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com, and I'm here with another video analysis. This one's going to be slightly a bit different. I haven't made a video in a while, and instead of just doing a regular video analysis where I go through the game, I want to take a step back, and I want to show you how I do my video analysis, or more accurately, how I actually analyze a chess game. One of my own games, right? Because there's a whole process here behind it. And if you look at my videos, you look at my blog, I try and present a very finished analysis. I try and have all of the answers. But when I start, I don't have all the answers. I gotta figure them out. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. And I want to show you how I do that, so that way you could copy this, or you could tweak it, or you can at least understand how it goes about. So I picked this game, and it's actually interesting, because this is a very, in some ways, uninteresting game, and yet by analyzing it, digging deep, I'm able to uncover several important chess ideas which can make me a better player. Even in this game, I was what, 400 points higher than my opponent, and it was a draw in under 30 moves. It was really blocked. It looked like it was a nothing game. I'll just show you quickly. Go through the whole game, then I'll break down how I would have analyzed, how I did analyze this. And so I was black here, and this is a Scandinavian. This is an opening I'm trying to learn, or relearn, or make it my main defense. Right? So far we're both developing. He plays h3, which is probably a waste of time, but it's nothing big deal, because I play c6, which is a common move. We both just develop. He plays in the center. Both just develop. Okay, so we exchange some pieces. Move the queen back, that makes sense. Oh, we exchange more pieces. Bring the rook facing the queen. Comes in, so again, not much has happened. We've only exchanged pieces. Okay, we're getting ready to exchange another piece. Here we go. So now, still nothing's really happening. Now the position's getting blocked. As we can see, it's going to be very hard to get a pawn break in. Then at this point, oh, the knight tries to come to the important square. We kick the queen back, but still, I got some pressure on this d-pawn, but not much is happening. Kick the knight away. Knight comes to a good square, but white tries to exchange it. I bring it back. He comes back, back. And that's where we called it a draw. So again, at first blush, it doesn't look like anything really interesting happens here. And I'll be honest, it wasn't the most interesting game in the world to play. I'm thinking, there's not a lot going on. And in the end, again, I'm rated, what, 400 points higher? And it's a draw. So, yawn. Sometimes that happens. But at the same time, when I analyzed it, I was able to dig in and really look at some interesting ideas, and again, to learn as a player. So what's the first thing I do? The first thing I do is I go back through the game, and I want to find moves in which I was either A, unsure, at any point where I was debating between a couple of moves, and or if there was one move I thought had to be the right move. Because these are the most important elements in the game. So if we come back, oddly, right here, when he played h3, I thought for sure that c6 had to be the best move. This is the only move in the position. That's what I thought. And so I mark this. Okay, we go forward a couple bit more. I thought bishop b4 was the best move, not the only move. That's good. We keep going, exchanging, yeah. Any other spots? I thought bishop takes d3 had to be the only move. That's what I thought, because he's obviously threatened to take, and I didn't like that take, and his queen comes out for him. But if I can't move my bishop anywhere, and if I were to retreat, well, he could just take, and then bring his queen out, and it's the exact same position. My pawn structure is worse. So that's why I thought when he played bishop d3, I had to take. So I mentally mark this. This position comes in. And every time there is a position where I think it's the only move, or I'm struggling between two moves, I mark it. And then what I do is I go back with the computer. This is where the computer comes in. And I analyze, is this the only move? And if it is the only move, I give myself a pat on the back. Yay, good job, Smithy, you're amazing. If it isn't, or there's a choice, right, then there's something I've got to learn. We back up. So my opponent plays h3, and I said c6 had to be the best move. The reason for that is I played a game. Let me just back up. I made a video analysis in which my opponent hadn't played knight f3. I played bishop f5. Then after queen f3, he's hitting both my bishop and this pawn. Now it's true, my queen protects the bishop, and so I thought I could play c6. My opponent then played b4, he took my bishop, and it took divine intervention for me not to lose the game. I mean, I'm down a piece. I mean, this is just terrible. So I know if my opponent doesn't play knight f3, I shouldn't play bishop f5. Oops, sorry. Yeah, here's the position. So that's why I thought c6 needed to be the right move. But it wasn't. The computer said bishop f5 is fine, and the database said that bishop f5 is fine. And I said, well, doesn't queen f3 just win? And it doesn't. And there's two reasons behind this. One, I could play c6. And now, if my opponent tries to play b4, distracting the queen, I've got queen e5 check. So we can see how the position was different. Back here, in this position, we can see the d-pawn is here, and it's stopping queen e5. Well, in the game continuation, there is no d-pawn, so obviously this check works. And then, black has a perfectly fine position. Arguably, black might even be better, because white has some weird pawns here, potentially some weak squares. We don't think his knight is on the best square on e2. It'd rather be on f3. And black is perfectly normally developed. His knight's going to go into d7, he can castle either direction. Black is perfectly fine. So c6 isn't mandatory. And in fact, after queen f3, knight c6 might even be the best move. Because now the knight also controls b4, so if white tries to do this, well, that doesn't work. Also, the knight might want to jump in here, where it's both hitting the queen, and it's also hitting this square, threatening a fork. Again, the queen is blocking the knight. So what happened here? When white played h3, I played c6, and I didn't even calculate, really. I'm just thinking, I know I played bishop f5 before in something similar, and I lost, or I should have lost. I reached a bad position. So I'm not going to do that. I didn't calculate. So this wasn't so much a chess mistake. This was a thinking process mistake. I need to realize that just because bishop f5 in this position, without the knight developed, isn't always a bad move. Queen f3 isn't always victorious. Okay, well, that's interesting. Maybe that's not interesting to you, right? But I've just learned something about this opening. Something I can apply to many different positions, right? If he hasn't played d4, right? Knight c6 is an option instead of c6. For me, that's very interesting. Let's keep going. The next, over here, bishop d3. I thought bishop takes d3 had to be the only move. That's what I thought. And it turns out the computer hates bishop d3. It also hates bishop g6. The computer thinks that, for instance, rook d8 is just a fine move. Now, I'm thinking, well, doesn't that look ugly? And it does. But then there's this idea in the Scandinavian, in this opening, which, if I'd been more practiced at the opening, perhaps I would have found during the game. The main idea is to battle for these light squares. In a perfect world, black's going to put a knight here, a knight here, and we can see that he has a dark squared bishop. This pawn's on a dark square. My knights are dominating the light squares. And so this bishop's going to feel very useless. If we just imagine normal moves, or if white doesn't do anything to distract black, okay, just look at this. This knight is great. They're doubly reinforcing each other. This pawn can always be defended by g6. It's impossible to take a knight out of the way. This knight could come to d5, and black's doing great. And it's very hard to see what white can do. Sure, he can bring a knight into e5. At some point, I can move this knight and then play f6, and the knight's gone. Or I can move the knight back, threaten to exchange it, and it's a good knight versus a bad bishop. Right? This is an idea. This is a general strategic theme. this pawn isn't so much a weakness as it is a strength. It's always protecting this knight. That's kind of cool. And I didn't think about that at all. I did not think about letting him take. I was so worried about my pawn structure that, if I do this, this, so my pawn structure is just worse. I never thought about the knight coming in. And again, this isn't so much a chess mistake. This wasn't me calculating incorrectly. This was me being biased, being prejudiced, saying this looks bad, and then I stop without going further. Right? This is twice now in which I did not make a chess mistake, in which I'm making a more general mistake, which could apply to many positions. Right? So I can already see a general weakness in my game. It's not thinking, basically, not even analyzing, and just saying, it looks bad, stop. Or something bad happened to me once before, stop. Instead of keeping going. Because unless it's the exact same position, right, the little changes make a really big deal. Right? Now, if white still had a light squared bishop, or if I had a light squared bishop, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Right? But we obviously just exchanged the bishop, so I guess that doesn't really apply. But it's this theme, and again, this isn't really rocket science. If you understand the Scandinavian, if you play several games, you'll realize Black's strategy is, especially this square, occupy. If you can occupy this square, it's amazing. Black is generally doing better. Or at the very least, white has no advantage. Like, not even close. So this is what I need to be keying on. So we can see there's two things here. I'm learning more about my opening, and I'm learning about me. Right? Now, this isn't theory. This position isn't theory. I don't know if it's ever been played before. My database says it hasn't, and that would make sense. But learning these ideas, which can apply anywhere. The next spot where I thought, right here, actually, these last two moves, where I played rook d8, because the rook hits the queen. He played rook d1, which is fine. Then I played h6. Why did I play h6? And now, again, you have to know why you played your moves. There needs to be a reason. Sometimes your reason is you don't know what to do. And honestly, this is kind of me here. I will be honest, I was rated so much higher than my opponent that I thought if I did nothing, he would blunder and lose at a certain point. That's generally how, what happens if you're massively outrated, massively underrated, right? One side generally makes a huge mistake. That's generally what happens. So I thought if I just hung around long enough, he would win. He would blunder, and then I would win. That didn't happen. My opponent played very well. When I played h6, this is one of those kind of useful waiting moves, but it's really me saying, I don't know what to do. What I could have done, I turn the computer on, I let it think, and one of the moves it suggests is a5. Now, I played a5 eventually in the game. Was like 3 moves later? a5. And then what happens is the game kind of dulls out. Nothing really happens. I could have played a5 sooner, and I could have started my play, and my queenside play would have been faster. I could have been doing better. By playing h6, it's doing nothing, and it's not seizing the initiative. All right? So part of that, again, is my general inexperience with this opening. I haven't played the Scandinavian in years. I'm trying to relearn it. Is that the idea of expanding on the queenside play, it took me a while to sort of figure that out. I was really thinking about trying to get these moves to work. c5 or e5 here. And you know what? They don't. And I spent way too much time looking at bad moves or at inferior moves. I should have been realizing it's queenside play. So that's something else I'm figuring out. Okay, so I need to look at queenside play earlier. Now, as it is, it doesn't make a huge difference because my opponent plays queen e3. And that lets me play knight d5 with a tempo. And then I play a5. So it doesn't make a big difference in the end, but against a stronger player, it will. And again, I always want to think about improving my thought process, right? Because there are chess mistakes, and then there are thinking thinking process mistakes. This game, there are no real blunders. And, well, I guess my next move might be. Because after b3, what happens is I take his bishop. Now, I think I have to do this. This is another one of those areas I'm investigating. I think I have to do this. Why? Because if I don't, if I do nothing, what I'm worried about is that white's going to be able to play bishop b2. He's going to be able to play c4, and he has a brilliant position, right? My knight's back. So now I no longer control the light square. He has it. He's got an obvious plan of playing d5, of blowing things open, and look, his queen, his major pieces are dominating these files. If he can play d5, this bishop becomes an absolute monster. And this is just bad. Also, look, my queenside play is completely stopped. If b5 doesn't really work, what's it doing? It's just creating a weakness for me. If I play a5, sorry, is it white to move? If I ever try and play a5, he can lock it up. Now, this pawn might be a major weakness in the future. So, with this c-pawn advance, this is why I thought, backing up, I had to take. And this is a position where I did not think hard enough, right? And again, I got, this was biased. I wanted to avoid that position. But what could have happened, if you just look what happened in the game, okay? I took, he took with the queen, I played, and then we locked the position up, and my goal was to get a knight into this square. Boom, boom. That was my goal, right? Now this makes sense, that is a worthy goal, but let's just back up for a second. If, instead of taking his bishop, what if we did the exact same thing? If I were to play a4, b4, b5, okay, what does he do? Let's say he plays in the game. He plays queen d3. I move my knight over, move my knight in. We just see what happens is when I do this, I'm now threatening to bring this knight here. So I still have my really good knight. My other knight's better. And if my knight lands on c4, this pawn's practically doomed with this bishop here. And so the best play for white would be to move his bishop back. I come in, and now just look at this position. This is a permanent weakness. My knight is always attacking it. His bishop must defend it. His bishop is terrible. His bishop has no squares. It can't go anywhere. And even if it could, if this weren't, like, going there does nothing. This is a terrible square. My knight and my queen protect here. We can't come to g5. This is a classic case of a good knight versus a bad bishop. And again, this is a common theme in the Scandinavian. The idea is we control the light squares to make the dark square bishop, especially, then it can't do anything. Because look, almost the entire queen side of black is on the light squares. And his bishop is bad. And I should have realized this, because my goal was to bring a knight, right here, to c4, which is a light square. And if I could have knight on d5, that's even better. My ideas, my strategy is light square play. And so by willingly trade my knight for his bishop, when I did that, I suppose this is a chess mistake. This is not realizing the nature of this position. I was worried he's going to move his bishop back, and then he's going to play c4. I didn't realize. I mean, if I would have actually calculated, whoops, sorry, that's the wrong variation. I'm really good at this. If I were to play a4, I would have just kept going. Notice that if he tried to, come back, well, then I would take, and again, he can't play, there is no c-pawn to play c4. My knight's guard, oh my goodness. I got an open file against this, against these pawns. These pawns look kind of weak. Look at his open file. It's facing a c-pawn that's perfectly protected. If he advances either of these pawns, it's just creating holes for my knights. I've got a very good position here. So right away, this is another position I'm looking at. So again, I'm hoping that you can learn from this game, which, again, it might not seem very interesting, and maybe it isn't, but we can learn. But again, it's this idea of trying to look at your thought process, that we can change it. Because if we can look in positions in which you think it's the only move or you're not sure, and you really zero in, you can change your thought process. And the next time you get into a position that is similar, you're going to be that much better prepared. That's how it works. Right? And once this happened, once we got into sort of this position, there wasn't a lot really going on anymore. The position was too blocked. I used up all of my my chances. Really, I had a good position, and here I do have a good position, but I don't have enough to play for a win. That's really it. Now, of course, there's one more thing, and that's, I'd be remiss not to say this, because it's kind of the last thing I do, is I do the blunder check. So what I do is I turn the computer on, I go through all the moves for both sides, and I look where there could have been a big swing in evaluation. Generally, I use 0.3 of a pawn or more, right? So if the position is 0.5 and then someone makes a move, then it's 0.6 or it's 0.4, like, that's not a huge swing. But if something goes, you know, from 0.4 to 0.8, from 0.4, you know, to over a pawn, or from 0.4 to 0, -1, right? Something like that, that's something I want to look at. Now, in this game, there weren't a lot of positions after the opening. You don't really trust the opening too much. You gotta be careful with that. But it was this position right here, actually. After so queen takes c. Okay, sorry. The position I was just looking at. Take, a5, b4. This very position in which white had a chance. White could have played d5, which I saw. The idea is the queen is pinging the pawn. And so I was looking at something like this. Take, and then I can just, you know, I move my rooks, then my queen's protected, his rook has to move somewhere, okay. I can bring my knight out, knight wants to go to d4, or I can bring my knight here, the knight wants to go to c4, and I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine in this position. That's what I thought. And the computer agrees. The computer says this position is fine. The problem is, after d5, e takes d5, there's a move that I didn't see. I thought white had to take his pawn back, otherwise he's down a pawn, yes? He has this excellent move, knight d4, where he's pressuring this pawn. Now I've got to be very careful, because if I try and defend with the rook, say here or here, all of a sudden he's got knight f5, where he's now threatening check with a fork. Right? Or he's going to bring his rook down here, pressuring this. He's also threatening mate. and all of a sudden, white's got an incredible amount of pressure. Black's position is terrible. Like, legitimately terrible. It's, I think the computer says the best thing black can do is give up the exchange. Whoa. We back up. So if I don't play rook c8, I do something else. No, that's not the move I want. So I play knight f6, allowing him, so I'm stopping the mate threat, right? He's able to win this pawn, exchange. And now if we look at this position, it's just, this is a dream position for white. This is a position that I like to play, well, everyone likes to play as white, because we can just see what's going to happen is black just has a terrible pawn structure. We're going to play knight d5 again, where the knight's attacking the pawn. This pawn's permanently blocked. We also have the ideas of potentially bring the rook down here. Maybe we do that first before moving the knight. We don't need to move the knight right away. We're going to double here, or we can double against this pawn. And black's queenside play was just completely stalled. I didn't see this. I didn't realize this. So what was the key move I missed? It wasn't d5. I saw d5. It was this. I got greedy. I was thinking about material. I was thinking white has to regain his pawn. Isn't that how we all think at times? We get stuck and he give a pawn, I win it back, right? Material. But instead, the idea of playing d5 wasn't just to exchange a pawn, it was to get this square. Because I like this square. This is a good square. His knight here is an even better square. I just missed that. I plain missed that. So this isn't a so much a thinking this is a chess mistake. This is a pure chess mistake. Okay, it was brought on by being materialistic, but I did not think about that decoy. So when I go back, when I look at this game, there are several things that I notice. All right, well, the things that I've learned again from what could be a boring game is that in the very opening, I thought, right, I learned something new. I learned that bishop f5 isn't a mistake. And I could play c6. I could play knight c6. All right? They're both good options. All right? So that's good. I've learned something deeper about my opening, about the first few moves. I'm not forced to play c6. You can actually see that one variation, actually. Bishop f5, queen f3. or by being able to play knight c6, where I'm actually ahead in development in this position. Whoa, that's good. Going further. All right, all these are standard moves so far. You know, it's here. I didn't want to take, right? But I thought it was the best move. I didn't like. There's this tension here because we know that giving up, breaking the tension is a bad thing to do. The idea of thinking I don't have to do that. I can control the squares. I can give up pawn structure. I can get a worse pawn structure in order to get better pieces. That's something that I don't do very often. I very much like having good pawn structure, but if I cling to that idea too much, it can give me, worse positions, or it's preventing me from getting the best position, which would have been this. Becoming here. Excellent. Become here. Where I played h6 because I didn't really know what to do. All right? h6 is a fine move, but it's not the best move, right? I could start my queenside play right away. That's an idea. And then we get to perhaps the critical position, which I would say is the main thing. Where I had the option of continuing here with a4 and then reaching a position with a terrible bishop against two excellent knights. This was a possibility, which I just plain missed. And I missed it because I wasn't thinking properly. Or more exactly, I was scared about phantoms. Right? I was worried that he's gonna do this and this without me seeing that if I just play normally, that would be impossible. Right? All of these, right? General ideas, which don't just apply to this position, they can apply to any position, because it's really thought process based. That's really the secret to game analysis, is that yes, you want to find the best moves, and that's great. You want to be able to present them so that way you know what to do next time. That is true. But even more than that, I want to improve my game in general. So this is how I do it. This is how I go about. And when I go through my analysis, maybe I go in deeper. Maybe I will use my computer to make sure that the moves are 100% accurate, and I try and do some themes. But this is how I do it. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. It's going on long enough. But that's it, right? So it's not just little tiny bit chess mistakes, and it's also not blind slavery against to the computer. Okay, the computer says this move, okay, so it must be this move. It's like, no, there's that human element. We need to understand why the computer wants to make its moves, right? We understand the plans, right? But we're understanding why we did things, right? Because if we do the right things, we want to keep doing it. And if we think the wrong things, or we're thinking incorrectly, we're approaching position incorrectly, we need to understand that, and we need to improve that. We need to stop that. We need to recognize those warning signs so we can not do it in the future. So the next time I play the Scandinavian, I'm going to be much better in these, because I understand these. I'm going to remember this forever. I'm not just remembering individual moves, I'm remembering these ideas. Right? And it's also going to help, obliquely at least, in every position that I play, for either color. That's why analyzing games is so important. If you do this, yes, it takes time. Well, it took me half an hour to go through, not the most interesting game in the world. For harder games, it does take longer, but the rewards are so worth it. Okay, so hope you found that helpful. Hope you found that useful. It's a bit different. I probably won't do this again. This breaking it down, I think once is enough, unless you really benefited from this. But that's how you analyze games. Okay, so again, I'm SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. That's it. Questions, comments, feedback, I'd love that. I know I haven't done a lot of videos. I apologize. I'll try and do more in the future. I actually got another one coming up really soon. I promised one for someone. But that's it. Okay, but thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.